As we tape this one day after the presidential election, we still don't know who the next president of the United States is, but I can tell you this much. The left claimed one huge scalp last night. It was Fox News. Hey, everybody, I'm Steve Green with Bill Whittle and Scott Ott, and this is Right Angle, brought to you by the members of BillWhittle.com. We need more members, by the way. We'll get to that later. Gentlemen, I've never seen anything like this. I was manning the PJ Media live blog for about 12 hours yesterday, and Fox News has hired Chris Stirewalt, a partisan Dem and a big Dem donor, to run their decision desk. That is the desk that calls the winners in each state. And last night, it became a running joke at first that Fox refused to call Florida hours after everybody else had. Fox News refused to call Texas for hours after everybody else had. And then they went and called Virginia based on 1%. That one's still up in the air. They ended up having to rescind that one. They called Arizona based on voter surveys while people were still standing in line to try and vote. If you ask me, Bill, this is outright voter suppression on the part of Fox News and Chris Stirewalt by treating solid red states as though they were still up in the air and telling voters out west in states like Nevada and Arizona that it was all over, and telling Republicans in Virginia to go home that was all over too. You know, I expected a lot of dirty tricks last night, Bill. I didn't see this one coming from Fox. Did you?
Oh, I certainly didn't see it coming to that degree, but Fox certainly isn't what it used to be and hasn't been for a long time. So if they got a scalp, they got a zombie scalp. But your point is much more important than the fact that Fox News lost whatever audience it may have had remaining. First of all, I think Tucker Carlson needs to go someplace else, and then they've got nothing, and they can have the Donna Brazile show on Fox News. So the bigger question is, let me just say one thing about what you said, because this needs to be really, really, really clearly understood. If you are a voter and it gets to be 2 or 3 hours after the polls have closed in the East Coast, in fact, even after the central time zone where the panhandle is, and they haven't called Florida yet, and they haven't called Georgia, and they haven't called North Carolina, and they haven't called Texas, you are inclined to think that this election is over and there's no reason to go vote in Arizona or Nevada. Now, how many people does that affect? I don't know. But if Biden's numbers were up, well, Biden won by 6 million votes, you could say it's still illegal, or it's still immoral, it's still undemocratic, but it didn't matter. But in this case, it does matter. It matters very, 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 very much. So that's just to say that this is not a trivial thing. This is not something without consequences. When a network, and by the way, and this is the critical point, this is the point. Every conservative in America is watching Fox News that night. Yeah. Every single one of them. That's where the voter suppression needs to be. It doesn't matter what they do on CNN because they don't care about suppressing the vote for Democrats. It works in their favor. Every single person in America who's a conservative is watching Fox News. And when Fox News is saying, well, gee, Florida still has, we can't call it. It's been 2 or 3 hours. It's so close. Might go either way. And when Arizona is instantly called like that, and you're standing in line, it's fraud. Okay. So the bigger question and the more important question is, why did this happen? How did it happen? I know why it happened. It happened in order to suppress the vote. That's why it happened. How did it happen? And I've spent my entire career pulling for America and doing my best to shoot down conspiracy theories and all the rest of it. But when you hear, Steve, do you have any idea what, I'm just asking, do you have a rough idea what Fox News' annual revenues are?
Not a clue.
Is it billions?
I would assume in terms of revenue, yes. In terms of actual profit, something, much, much smaller than that.
Okay, so what I'm trying to say is this. When it is proven through income tax records that George Soros by himself puts $34 billion into American electoral processes, $34 billion. And that's, if you were to say, just for the sake of the argument, I don't have the evidence, but just for the sake of the argument, because I can't think of another reason. If you were to peel $1 billion off of that $34 billion and hand it to somebody at Fox News who makes the hiring decisions that allowed this to happen, I'm not even saying that they put it in their pocket. What I'm saying is $1 billion of income that requires no expenditures, right? You don't have to pay for the cost of producing shows to get that $1 billion. It's just $1 billion, whatever the number is, right? That number, that kind of money can make that kind of influence. And we are past the point where we can say things like, well, why do we agree to these debates that are moderated by Democrats? Why do we agree to these debates that are moderated by people who write, write biographies of Nancy Pelosi? Why do we agree to that? It's past that point now. The fact that Fox News is the home of conservatives, that's where conservatives were watching the election results, and the fact that that election was called by a Democrat who'd given thousands of dollars to Hillary Clinton, thousands of dollars to Barack Obama. We knew it in advance. Fox News knew it in advance. And Fox News knew that this would cost them their audience. There is no other way that I can explain it than to say that somebody got paid for that to happen. If there is a rational explanation that does not require behind the scenes dealing, then I am more than willing to hear that rational explanation. But I can't think of one because Fox News is finished. The commentary, the ongoing commentary among people, among conservatives, and their reaction to Fox News means that Fox News is finished. And so you have to ask yourself, if you hire a Democrat to call the election for Republicans, what would your possible motivation for that be? As a businessman, I'm just asking.
That is a good question. And that dovetails into what I wanted to ask Scott about. Scott, let's look at the sort of broader picture. I can't remember whose law of politics this is. It might be Conquest's third law, but I'm running on about 3 hours of sleep, and those 3 hours weren't very good. And there was maybe a little bit of drinking last night. But the law states that any institution that is not explicitly right-wing will eventually become left-wing because that's what the left does. They're all about the change, not so much about the hope, but definitely about the change. And we like to say, get woke, go broke, but I have the feeling Fox News is still going to be around in a year. The NBA has gone full woke, has been for years. They're not making the money they used to, but the NBA hasn't exactly gone broke. We can say the same thing about the NFL. We can say the same thing about Hollywood. Is there a sea change brewing that just hasn't happened yet, where these institutions do finally go broke? Or do we need to give them a push? What's your big picture view here?
You know, that's hard to tell because it's always flummoxed me as to how there can be so many conservatives in this country or at least so many Republicans or people who are on the right side of the aisle and virtually no source of information available to them other than Fox News. Wall Street Journal has a much more niche market, so I really don't kind of include that in sort of mass publications. But there's really not a lot out there beyond the blogosphere and social media and Twitter feeds to really feed the need for information that doesn't explicitly bend things to the left. And so, and I've thought for a long time that Fox, while they tout their fair and balanced coverage, and they've always had people like Alan Combs, as part of their programming, who bring the other side, or Juan Williams, they make an effort to play both sides of the story, so to speak. It doesn't seem to be effective at doing anything that's valuable to us. I don't want to hear any projections based on exit polling. You can do a projection for me if you want after the polls close and based on the actual vote counts from which precincts, from which counties those vote counts are coming in, and based on what you know about the political bias or partisanship in the counties that are still out. I don't really think we even need that. But if you're going to do it that way. But what several times during the course of the evening, Brett Baer at Fox News and Brit Hume, who they brought in as a emeritus commentator, they were both pressing Chris Stirewalt and then the guy who's really kind of behind the scenes running the decision desk about how is it possible that we haven't called these states yet, and or in places that they had called, saying how is it possible that you could call this state already with so little of the vote in, and they were just so confident about their the outcome going the way they said it would go. You know, they were just like, well, we wish we could tell you something different, but we are not making a mistake here. Our exit polling interviews with these people show exactly what these people are going to do in these states. And I just thought, first of all, you can't possibly know that because you're just basing it on what people tell you, and people often tell you what they think you want to hear. And secondly, if the polls are not closed yet, I don't think you should be projecting that kind of information because it is not just a description. In some ways, it can be determinative or at least steer the direction in the places that haven't. You think we would have learned this in, what was it, 2000? When the Panhandle
Florida
hadn't voted
Panhandle.
yet. Yeah. But in any case, it's, just shut up with that stuff. And I don't even care whether it's Chris Stirewalt or this guy behind the scenes or somebody who's a red meat Republican. Just don't do it at all.
Yeah, it might be good for ratings, but it tears at the fabric of the republic, and it doesn't matter which side is doing it for which side. It's bad for the social fabric of this country. Scott and Bill gave you the big picture. Let me drill down to the smallest part of the picture. And by that, I mean Joe Biden, a man so small that given every single advantage that the media, the university system, and Hollywood could give him, still had to be dragged across the finish line. And if he does actually cross it, it'll be through cheating. Still, given every advantage, they still had to cheat to win this thing. So look at that smallest of men. That smallest of men, Joe Biden, that feeble-minded fool. Democrats have started this fun little game where if they can't beat a nominee, they discredit and smear the nominee so that they'll always have an asterisk by their name. Oh, Donald Trump was put into office by the Russians. There's an asterisk next to his name, and everything he does is illegitimate. Brett Kavanaugh, every single one of his decisions on the Supreme Court is tainted because he probably raped somebody. So there's an asterisk by Brett Kavanaugh's name. And they did the same thing to Neil Gorsuch. Oh, that's supposed to be Merrick Garland's seat. You get an asterisk by your name and nothing you ever do will be legitimate again. Well, guess what? If somehow, by hook and crook, Joe Biden is sworn in as the next president, he will have an asterisk by his name. And it will have been put there by Fox News. There's your right angle on that. Hey, listen, folks, I mean this from the bottom of my heart. We do this with your support. We need your support. If you're not a member and you're watching this stuff for free, please go to BillWhittle.com. Click that join button, become a member, because if he's sworn in January, we got 4 long years of fighting it, so we're going to need your help to fight him. So get on board. We'd love to have you here. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.